So let's get started with circular motion. What we have gone through some part of kinematics and one simple example of kinematics. So I will just touch upon one part here. So this particular question, again to recap, it was related to constant angular acceleration. Constant angular acceleration is analogous to constant acceleration in linear motion. Three equations are valid. Just imagine it's a gramophone and you are looking from the top. Gramophone, a coin is kept here, and gramophone is set into motion. It is started accelerating, and the coin also moving along. Okay, so we are done. This is the angular acceleration. What is the angular speed after 1 second? And then we also calculate something, time taken to complete 1/4 of the rotation. How much time would it take when the coin moves from here to here also? And we calculated using from simple angular displacement has to be pi by 2. We calculated 2 seconds. And when it comes here, we can calculate some other instantaneous linear parameter. When an object goes into circular motion, it will have instantaneous velocity and instantaneous acceleration. So see here what we did here, though the parameter was given rotation, but at every instance we can calculate what are the linear parameters in terms of velocity and acceleration. Velocity is equal to r omega. So at this instant moving in this velocity, and we had acceleration. So what will be the resultant acceleration? This will be the direction resultant acceleration. There will be what you call as AT here, and there's a centripetal acceleration. So as it has moved from here to here, what has happened? This tangential acceleration here also it was same. So the tangential acceleration is same here. Your tangential acceleration r alpha, so alpha is constant. So whatever alpha tangential acceleration we had here, even at this point also tangential acceleration remains same. And centripetal acceleration has increased because omega is increasing. So as omega keeps changing, the centripetal acceleration keeps changing. Now let's think of few more things. What would have happened if this friction between gramophone and coin was 0? What would happen to this coin if so let's take a case when coefficient of friction between the gramophone surface and the coin was 0. In that case, what would have happened to the coin, Jaydeep?
It would start slipping.
It would not move, is it not? So what will happen? There will be relative motion. It will just remain where it is, only gramophone surface will move. So what has, see here at this instance, the moment we started gramophone, at this particular point on the gramophone had an acceleration of 80. And so if you look at this particular direction, this is the tangential direction. So if we look at, there are 2 points which are in contact. Coin is in contact with some part of the gramophone. If there's no slipping, both have to have same acceleration. The coin also have to have 80 acceleration. And who's providing the force for this acceleration? If at this particular time, this is the direction of tangential acceleration of point on the gramophone, the coin also must have the same acceleration. It means force also must act on the coin in this direction, and that force is nothing but, see, the force is acting in the horizontal plane, and that force is nothing but friction force. So at this point in time, just a friction force acting. Now when we come here, which direction is the friction acting? So when it come here, what is the friction force? And the friction force always, how does friction act? So friction tends to make the acceleration in the plane of contact equal. So the point what we have calculated here, the gramophone surface and coin both have the same acceleration, which will be equal to, if we take resultant acceleration, this is the resultant acceleration, AC square plus AT square. Which direction we have calculated this angle theta, which direction the friction will act, and this force, if it is having this acceleration, some force must be acting. Which friction force is acting? Friction is acting at this instance in this direction. Thus your dynamics part. So whatever direction the acceleration is, the force also must act in the same direction. So that's the direction of friction. So friction will act along the resultant acceleration if no slipping is taking place. And this is an important point which all of you must be here, we must keep in mind. Okay. So this is where how the force is acting. Now let's understand here some more similar question here. If magnitude of velocity of particle moving in a circle in a fixed radius is k into t. So what we notice here, time t is equal to 0, velocity is 0, and magnitude of velocities keep increasing. It is increasing with time linearly. And so which are the equations to and from? So just imagine here, so just something you are in a car and your car start accelerating, but rather than going in the straight direction, if you turn the steering on the car and keep it at a particular angle, it will trace out a circular path. But you keep your foot on the accelerator, it will keep moving faster and faster. So rather than moving in a straight path, it is moving in a circular path. So circular path, see, as far as tangential motion is concerned, speed will remain same as if it was moving on a straight path, but direction also is changing. The speed will keep on increasing. So let's understand, is that statement true or not? Let's understand, what is this giving? Magnitude of velocity of particle in a fixed is equal to k2. So how do we write magnitude of velocity? Well, magnitude of velocity is kt. It implies this is equal to kt. That's magnitude velocity. Or if I write v without the bar here, that's what is given. So if I differentiate this one with reference to time, I get the tangential acceleration. It implies tangential acceleration is constant. This kind of motion also is a uniformly accelerated circular motion. Alpha is constant, at is constant. Angle between centripetal and tangential acceleration will keep on decreasing. Let's think of, is this statement correct or not? Angle between centripetal. So when it comes to, let's say it has come to this point here. We take a general point here. What is direction of centripetal? Which is centripetal direction? Centripetal direction, you understand here, this is tangential direction, this is centripetal direction. So this will be AC and this will be AT. By definition, AC and AT are always at 90 degrees, so angle will not change. This statement is not correct. Magnitude of centripetal force will keep on increasing. What is centripetal force equal to? Mass into centripetal acceleration. So indirectly it's asking, this AC will keep increasing. What does AC depend on? Let's look at what is centripetal acceleration, magnitude of acceleration at time. So magnitude. So what is centripetal acceleration here? Centripetal acceleration is m into v square by r. And since here v is increasing, centripetal acceleration also will keep on increasing. So this statement is correct. The magnitude of tangential component of net force is constant. So it is equivalent to, when to calculate tangential component of net force, we can first calculate tangential component of net acceleration. And we multiply by m, we get the tangential component of force. So what is tangential component of acceleration? We have already calculated tangential component of acceleration is constant. So this magnitude is constant. This statement is correct. Okay. Yes, and if we have to calculate what is the magnitude of acceleration at time, suppose I want to calculate what is the acceleration as a function of time. So this one AC is equal to v square by r, and velocity at time t, this is value of b as kt. This how velocity varies. So centripetal acceleration is k square t square by r. Resultant acceleration is vector sum of tangential and centripetal acceleration. Tangential acceleration is constant, k square, and this whole thing whole square is square root. It will keep increasing with time, and angle with velocity also keep increasing. This angle, if this is the angle between velocity and the resultant acceleration, as centripetal acceleration keeps increasing, this angle also will keep increasing. So these are some things we can understand about a motion of uniformly accelerated circular motion. So direction of friction force on the car, again same question, when the car is moving here, which direction of friction force is acting? The friction force only is keeping it moving in a circular path. The friction was not there. Now friction is doing two parts. Friction is also providing centripetal force, is also providing tangential force for car to accelerate, and centripetal force to car to change direction. Centripetal force provides change in direction, force needed for change in direction. Tangential acceleration provides force for change in speed, which could be to increase or decrease. Let's move on to next question. A car is again moving in a circular path. It could be any point. It doesn't matter what the car circular path or radius are, with a uniform speed v. Find magnitude of change in velocity and average acceleration when the car's direction changes by theta. So, okay, so let's understand what is car direction. So just visualize this question and then we'll try to answer. So this is the circular path of radius r and it is moving here. So this is initially this point P. Since we have to calculate instantaneous velocity, talk about velocity at this particular point, tangential velocity is v1. And it comes to another point P dash, velocity is v2 bar. Magnitudes are same, the directions are changed. That's why I can't write v1 bar. And let's say this angular displacement is theta. So this is angle between normal. So whatever 2 points in the circle, we know the property. Whatever angle we have between normal and 2 points, angle between tangents also be the same. If I extend this direction, the angle between v2 and v1 also will be theta. So when it undergoes angular displacement theta, the direction velocity also changes by theta. So what we need to calculate here, magnitude of change in velocity. See, understand difference between the two terms. If I have here, it is a magnitude of change in velocity. We could also change in magnitude of velocity. Both the things are different. So in this case, first case, what we do here, see in this particular case, we calculate for initial magnitude change in magnitude of velocity. Magnitude is calculated first, and then we calculate change. If it was second part, if the wording was like this, change in magnitude of velocity, initial magnitude also is v1, final magnitude also v1, change is equal to 0. But in here I was asking magnitude of change in velocity, and velocity is a vector quantity. So change in velocity is nothing but vector difference is v2 bar minus v1 bar. So we need to find vector difference between the two. And two vectors are of equal magnitude, but angle between them is theta. So the two ways we can understand graphically also. The difference graphically we can, since addition is simpler graphically. So I can write this v2 vector plus negative of v1 vector. Okay, so let's see in terms of graphically also what will happen. It gives you some understanding of, see, what is v2 minus v1? This is the direction of average acceleration. Average acceleration not along velocity. Average acceleration is along the change in velocity. So this will give you direction of average acceleration. That's why direction is important. So I have drawn v2 vector. V2 vector, I'm going to add negative of v1 vector. So what I do, I'll reverse the direction of v1, and after reversing, how do we add? We place the tail of the second vector on the head of the first vector. So this is what I have drawn the second vector, v1 bar, negative of v1 bar. So I inverted its direction. So tail of the second vector and the head of the first vector. And from the tail of first vector to head of the second vector, this is the direction of resultant v2 minus v1. And this will be the direction of acceleration also. If I do that, this will direction comes along which direction? It is along the bisector. That's the direction of v2 minus v1 bar, v2 bar minus v1 bar. So this is what graphically what it means. And what is this angle here? This angle is theta. This also is v, and this also is v. We can easily calculate it from here also. If this side is v, this side will be v. If this is theta, it will be equal to 2v sine theta by 2. You can do graphically, but we can also do in terms of law of parallelogram. So we need to calculate. So what is required? We need to calculate change in velocity, and then we have to calculate this magnitude. This is what we need to calculate here. And we can calculate this magnitude with law of parallelogram. Both have equal magnitude. So v1 and v2 both have magnitude of v. So it becomes v1 square, v square plus v square minus 2v1 v2 cos theta. That's the formula. So we use that formula here, and we simplify. It comes equal to 2v sine theta by 2. That's the magnitude of change in velocity. Can we calculate average acceleration? Let's do average acceleration. What is average acceleration equal to? Average acceleration also is a vector quantity. So first we have to find v2 bar minus v1 bar, vector difference. So all we do, we have already find change in velocity. We need to find the time it will take to move from P to P dash. The distance traveled is r theta, speed is v. So we can calculate based on distance travel. So time is equal to r theta and speed is v. So what is the average acceleration? Average acceleration, this is something velocity I divide by time. If I divide by time, this particular time here, it comes equal to v square r. I have written in particular format. Just notice that one. So this expression comes v square by r into sine theta by 2 by theta by 2. So what will happen when t tends to 0? When t tends to 0, even theta also will tend to 0. And we know when theta tends to 0, sine of, when fx tends to 0, sine of fx by fx, limit fx tends to 0 is equal to 1. So this term will become 1 when the time is infinitely small, and we get average acceleration equal to, that becomes instantaneous acceleration v square by r, and the direction is along the bisector. So this how it is. Okay. Now let's understand one more thing. So when we talk about circular motion, see, circular motion doesn't necessarily mean it has to always move in a circular path. Any motion which is in form of a curve, every point it will have a instantaneous radius of circular motion. See, why? Again, very briefly, if I give you some idea behind it, suppose this is the direction velocity at point P, this is velocity, and it is not moving in a straight path, it takes in a curved path. So I'll take another point nearby, and the direction, because if it is moving in a curved path, the direction must have changed. So this here, this is direction of velocity. How do we find radius of curvature and center of this equivalent circular path? We know the center always lies perpendicular to velocity. So if I draw a perpendicular here at this point, and here also at this particular point, whatever velocity we have, if I draw the perpendicular, and since they are at an angle, it will intersect. So if these 2 points are close by, the normals will, or perpendicular to velocity will intersect, and point of intersection will be instantaneous center of circular motion, and this will become the radius of circular motion for that brief time interval, or instantaneous radius of circular motion. So any curvilinear motion will have instantaneous radius of circular motion, and center of circular motion lies on the line perpendicular to velocity at that instance. So let's take this case here. So suppose there's a velocity here, and how do we, and this purpose, it relates to, see, taking curved part, the instantaneous radius of circular motion depends on combination of velocity and acceleration. That's what we are trying to find out. See, this velocity here, and what is the acceleration? Acceleration has some value, acceleration is making some random angle theta from here. Had theta been 0, it would have a straight path. Anything theta is not equal to 0, it means it will take path will change and become curvilinear motion. So anything theta not being 0 and not being 180 is a curvilinear motion. The moment have an acceleration, an angle between velocity and acceleration is given. I can resolve it into 2 components. One is perpendicular to velocity is called centripetal component of acceleration. So what is important to know? If I know the angle between velocity and acceleration, I can find out centripetal acceleration. And if I have velocity and centripetal acceleration, we can find radius. So that's property what we use. Once we find centripetal acceleration is equal to v square by r, and it will lie on a line which is perpendicular to velocity. At what distance? We can calculate the distance r also, so we can locate the center of instantaneous circular path. And using this one. So what we need to find instantaneous radius and center, we need to know the velocity vector, we need to know the acceleration vector. If 2 vectors are known, we can find out instantaneous radius of circular path. Okay. So we can do so. R is equal to, so what is radius? If we have v square by centripetal component of acceleration, that's a radius. And this is the kind of path it will have. So again, if I had to represent, what does it indicate here? So this is something at this path. So this is AC. So center also will lie in this direction. If I mark O point at a distance R, so at this particular point, if I draw a curve, the path will be along this direction. It will be like a small arc of a circle of radius R. Okay, so let's take one example and try to apply here. A particle of mass of 1 kg is moving in xy plane, whose position is described by position vector. So position vector is given as a function of time, and at t is equal to 1 second, we need to find the velocity, acceleration, tangential and centripetal acceleration, and instantaneous radius of circular motion, all at t is equal to 1. So let's see how do we do it. So let's first of all, to find velocity, v is pretty simple. If r is given, dr by dt is instantaneous velocity, which is pretty simple. We find v is equal to dr by dt, it becomes equal to 2t I cap plus 4 j cap. So pretty simple. And simply we have to find acceleration. Again, we take a derivative velocity. We get 2i. The moment I see this number, I feel a little happy because this one something is nothing but uniformly accelerated motion. So this is a uniformly accelerated motion, and I'll make one more point. Whenever acceleration is uniform and it is not along the direction of velocity, if this, what kind of motion this particle will have? This particle will have a parabolic trajectory. That's a condition for parabolic trajectory. So parabolic trajectory, so that's the condition we arrive at. So this particle also will have a parabolic trajectory, and every parabola will have an axis. So what will the axis of parabola? You remember in terms of gravity, gravity acts downwards, and shape of parabola is like this. Its path is something like this. So which direction? The direction axis of parabola is along the direction of acceleration. So whenever acceleration is constant and it is not along velocity, the trajectory is always parabolic, and the axis of parabola lies along the direction of acceleration. Here this also axis will lie along x-axis. Right. So trajectory of the particle, we understand constant acceleration, similar velocity, always parabolic one with axis along a. Now, parabolic is equivalent to circular motion of varying radius and center. So, different point, even parabolic motion is a curvilinear motion. It will have instantaneous radius of circular motion and center. That's what we are trying to understand. So, we need to find what is the tangential and centripetal acceleration at t equal to 1. So, to find that, what I need to know the velocity vector and acceleration vector at time t is equal to 1. I can easily find velocity vector at t is equal to 1 second is 2 I cap plus 4 j cap. So if this is I cap and if this is j cap, I can mark this represents my velocity vector at time is equal to 1 second. And which direction the acceleration is? Acceleration is along I cap. So this is the direction of acceleration. We have marked acceleration as well as velocity at t is equal to 1 second. Now what else we need to find? We need to find tangential acceleration and centripetal. So this is an acceleration, so it has certain angle theta here. What is called as centripetal acceleration? It has to be perpendicular to velocity. So this would be the centripetal component of acceleration, and this would be the tangential component of acceleration. How would I find it out? If magnitude of A is known, A cos theta is tangential component, and A sin theta is centripetal component, which is giving it to circular motion. So this is changing the speed, and this component is making it move in a curvilinear path. So what is the nature of path here? Since centripetal acceleration in this direction, it will curve towards right. It will curve something like this. So can we find at t equal to 1? This is v and I have problem. So what is angle between velocity and acceleration? I need angle theta here. So I can find using dot product property, I can find value of cos theta. Will be dot value divided by product of their magnitudes. So v dot a, it comes equal to 2 into 2. So 4 and 4 into 0. So numerator is dot product is 4 divided by the magnitude at 1 second. This magnitude is I don't know why I written 4. This is 2 and this one is 16 plus 4, 20. So it comes cos theta comes equal to 1 by root 5. So I can find out sin theta also. So once I have cos theta and sin theta, magnitude of A is known, which is 2. I can find both the acceleration. I can find AC is equal to A sin theta, that's the value, and AC sin theta, sorry. So AC sin theta, the important point what I want to understand here, the moment AC is known, which is this one, AC has to be equal to B square by R. I can find out instantaneous radius also. R comes to 5 root 5 and a simple one. So whenever velocity vector at any point, if velocity vector and acceleration vectors are known, at that distance we can find out. So if I have to mark what kind of trajectory it will have along the direction of perpendicular to velocity in this direction, center will lie on this normal to velocity direction. At what distance? R is equal to 5 root 2. And from this point, if I draw arc of a circle at this particular instance is moving along this path. So that is what we need to understand here. So this is the part about circular motion, and from circular motion I'm switching on to something related to work power energy. Is related to, I'll do a couple of questions based on some people have raised doubts. So I'm just trying to clarify those doubts. Okay, so calculate work done by the string. See, this is the question given here. This is 1 kg mass, this is 2 kg mass. If we apply 60 Newton force, and this is if we have to calculate what will be acceleration of block A, block B, what will the displacement in 1 second. By now, I think all of this should be comfortable. How would I calculate? Moment this force is 60 Newton by taking equilibrium of the pulley. The tension in each string will be 30 Newton, 30 Newton. This we can easily arrive at. So this also will 30 Newton. So if I take this as a free body diagram, take as a system, sorry, not if I take as a system, downward weight is actually 10 Newton, upward force is 30 Newton. So net force is 20 on 1. So it will have an upward acceleration of A is equal to 20. Similarly, I come to this block, it will have upward force of 30 Newton. It will have downward force of 20 Newton. So net force is 10 on 5. It will have acceleration of a equal to 5. And in 1 second, and what is the displacement both of them will undergo? So displacement of A in 1 second will be equal to 1 by 2, 20 into 1 square, which is equal to 10 meter. And displacement of B, if you have to calculate 1 by 2 into 5 into T square will be equal to 5 by 2 meter. So that's the kind of displacement they will suffer. This we know. So what we have to do now, we have to calculate work done by the string in first 1 second. If force of 60 Newton start acting at time t is equal to 0. So let's see. So moment you have to calculate work done by the string. You see, sometimes this something will keep this figure in mind. Work done by the string. See what we sometimes do. Okay, work done by the string. See, typically, if you have to calculate what is the work done by the string on block A and block B, that should be easy to calculate. So let's see if work done by string we have to calculate. So many times what people do, they calculate work done by the string on the object it is connected to. It is connected to two objects A and B. Let's see what happens if we calculate work done. Okay, so in this case, there's a shape here. Let's do that one. I think we'll keep that in mind, whatever figures we have. So when we calculate work done on 1 kg block and 2 kg block, we know this force is 30 Newton, this force is 30 Newton. And I have calculated displacement. This displacement was 20 and this displacement was 5 by 2 or something. Yes. So this is 10 meters, sorry. This displacement was 10 meters. 1 by 2, a 20, a t square. And this is, sorry, 10 meter. So work done by string on 1 kg block. So we could have calculated 30 Newton, displacement is 10, 300 joules is the work done by string on one block B. Similarly, we have to calculate on 2 kg block 30 into 2.5, which is 75 joules. So does it mean the string has done net work of 375 joules? Or are we missing something? In both cases, string forces have done positive work. But string as such is not a source of energy. Wherefrom it will give and get energy to get this part to give positive work. So what we have missed out, see, whenever we do something like this, when we have to calculate string, work done by string, we need to take the string force of tension. What we do, we have conceptually, we have broken the spring into two parts here. One part of the string, lower part and upper part. What we have done, we have calculated work done by the lower part of the string here. But there's upper part of the string also, which is running around the pulley. So this part also, so we have broken this into two parts here. So this 30 Newton force acts here as well, and 30 Newton force acts here as well. So here also, depending on and this points where this particular point which is connected to pulley. So this also will have certain displacement. What a displacement it will have. So one way to understand where is it, this part also, this also will undergo some displacement. How much displacement this point will undergo? This particular point has moved up, so this point also has moved up. How much distance this point has moved up? 10 meters. So this also will have 30 minus 10 the work done, and this also 30 minus 2.5 work done. Or other way around also you want to calculate, yes, it will come to. So this is something on pulley, this will be work done. So you can, if you want not comfortable, we can think of it is going around the pulley. Let's calculate what is the work it will do on the pulley. If you have to calculate work done on the pulley, this is force acting on the pulley because it's running around only three objects it is connected to. So pulley, in this case, pulley will have a displacement equal to how much? Average of the two. So displacement is 10 plus 5 by 2. So work done on the pulley, both the tension T and T, and into 2 into 30, this are 30, this are 30, into displacement of pulley, it comes equal to minus 375. So if I add it up, net work done becomes 0, which makes sense. So whatever we have to calculate work done by the string, we need to calculate work done not only in the objects it is connected to, we also need to take this part as well. Unless the pulley is fixed. If the pulley was fixed, the work done on the pulley would have come to 0. So this is part I think all of you need to understand if you are interested in understanding how the work done by string is calculated, and it should always add up to 0. And if you notice here, what is the work done by 60 Newton force on the pulley? Work done by 60 Newton force on the pulley is equal to same. Work done by 375 joules. So whatever on the total work done on the pulley comes to 0. Can you give a reason why is the work done coming on the top pulley is coming to 0? Is by chance or is it would always come to 0? Why would work done on the pulley will come to is coming to 0 here? Can I calculate what done with this and
Cannot
this?
have,
It has
it
no
cannot have
mass.
any
It
form
cannot
of
have,
energy.
no, it cannot have net force. It cannot have kinetic energy. It has to come to 0. Now coming to one more question, Anita asked, and let me do that question. Let this question on the string. So let's understand the behavior of spring a little better. Again, I know my spring many times is misspelled is understanding of extension of spring. So let's imagine this is spring here. One side connected to fixed wall and other side is connected to block so that we apply force using the block. And the spring will have natural length, some L naught. Okay. So if imagine a uniform increase, and now let's say even though it is one spring, we can imagine it has two parts. We can just mark a point on this surface somewhere. So when we apply a force, and let's say we apply a force and it is at a state of rest, but this point is not moving back and forth. So if this is not back and forth, it means that the spring also is applying a force F here, and this force also will F here. Okay. So what we have to understand, it has undergone certain extension. It has extension, some extension, say X naught. Now, even those one pulley, let's see if we suppose I mark a point here. So this end point has moved by distance X naught. I have marked a point which is halfway through. So conceptually, what I am looking at, when I mark a point, I can put a paint mark on this spring. So this is left half of the spring and this is the right half of the spring. So when this end undergoes displacement X naught, will this point remain at the same place or will it also undergo displacement? And it's very easy to prove if the extension here is X naught, this half of the spring also will undergo displacement of X naught by 2. Let's see how do we understand here. So the point which was here, if I look at that, it also would undergo some displacement. So every part of the spring, except for the point which is connected fixed here, will undergo some displacement. This displacement will be X naught by 2. Let's understand why is it so. So even though we can imagine, we can always visualize as two halves. So I'm taking the left half of the spring is separate and right half of the spring is separate. The right hand, this here, the spring, this force F is acting. It is in the state of equilibrium. It means here also the contact force has to be equal to F. And here also the force was F and so it means both the spring, this also F. So this two, now I have divided into two parts. Both are identical. So whatever extension this part has, this part also has to have same extension. Since the entire spring had an extension of X naught, it means this part of the spring has extension of X naught, and this also has extension of X naught. So if one full spring, if I visualize it as two equal parts, each part will share that extension or displacement, force remaining same. That's how string behaves. Extension of part of spring is proportional to its length. So if I take 1/3 of the length, if the total extension is 3 centimeter, if I divide into 3 parts, each part will have extension of 1 centimeter, if total is 3 centimeter. So extension of part of the spring is proportional to its length. Okay, and this also is important. So if I take 1 by n part of this, I divide the entire spring in n parts. The length is, each part will have length of 1 by n. So whatever, if I apply force F, extension of the spring was X, the spring constant K was equal to F by X for the whole spring. So this was on the whole spring, but if I take only length, which is 1/n of the spring length. So what is the part here? This length is not L naught, I am taking L naught by n part here. But you see, everywhere force is same. But this part, since it is 1/n part, extension will not be X, extension will be X by n. So this, if I visualize it separately, 1/n part of the spring, it has same force, extension is different, hence equivalent spring constant for this part also be different. What is the spring constant? Force divided by extension. It will have F, force remaining same, divided by X by n. So spring constant becomes K times. So that's why the spring constant is inversely proportional to length of the spring. One spring, if I divide into 3 parts, cut into 3 parts here, each part will have, if original spring constant was K, if I divide into 3 parts, each will have spring constant of 3K. I hope you have understood, because if I apply same force on, say this spring I have cut into 3 parts. If I apply force F here, whatever extension this entire spring would have had at that force, this will have only 1/3 extension. Since the extension is 1/3 for a given force, this spring constant is 3 times. So that is another part, and so spring constant is that's what it is, and it will be equal to proportional to 1 by L. The reason I dealt with, because there was one question, Anita, now look at this question here. You posted this doubt, let me do that one. So sometimes in rare cases, they may also ask question about kinetic energy of the spring, which has some mass. So here also the spring, in most cases we take it massless, but let's take a case. This spring has some mass M here. And it is connected to 2 ends. So we have connected to one end block away. And what we have done here, there's a block connected here. And using an external force, we have given a constant velocity to the block here. We are given constant velocity to the block. So the spring is M. So constant velocity means what? The part of the spring which is connected to the block. This also will have velocity V. But how about this part of the spring here? This will have 0 velocity. What about this part, this part, this part, this part, this part? So all parts, the velocity will be proportional to displacement. And since the displacement is proportional to distance from one end, even velocity also will be proportional to its distance from the fixed point. That's an important point here. So different point of the, when we give a constant velocity to one end of the spring, different part of the spring also will acquire velocity, which will be proportional to is, if I call this as x is equal to 0, and position is measured from here. So velocity will be proportional to x. So if I take a small part of the spring here, which has mass dm, this part will have velocity vx and is proportional to v. So let's understand what it means. So suppose I plot velocity of different parts of the spring, x being the position, this is how the velocity will vary. At this point, at x is equal to L naught, this velocity will be equal to v. In between, it will vary like this. So if this mass is m here, so different parts will have different velocity. If I have to calculate kinetic energy of the entire spring, since different parts have different velocity, I need to conceptually break the spring into several small elements and calculate kinetic energy of one small element. So this is small element, I'll calculate the kinetic energy. A random element of spring, which is between position x and x plus delta x plus dx. So what is the kinetic energy of this? I'll calculate and add it up for remaining part also. So if the length of spring is L, the velocity of the part of spring mass at position x will be equal to v by L into x. That's what you're done. At position x, this is what the velocity will be. So this is Vx here. So we know position as a function. So what is the kinetic energy of mass between x and x plus dx? Well, we have taken a small part mass. And for since the x coordinate has not changed much, dx is very small here, infinitely small. Velocity for this part can be assumed to be constant equal to Vx. So kinetic energy equal to 1 by 2 m into square of the velocity. This term is square of the velocity. So similar way, what is the kinetic energy of the entire length of the spring? I add up all the kinetic energy 0 to L, 1 by 2 m. What is dm here? dm is proportional to its length. So mass per unit length is m by L into that. Mass per unit length into length dx here. And if I integrate, I get the kinetic energy of entire length of the spring. So this is one type, and we can have other variation also. Other variation could be like this. There's a spring here, and is connected to two mass here, and M1 and M2. And if we give constant velocity to this mass here, 2v, and this give constant velocity v here, different parts of the spring also will acquire velocity, and the spring has some mass m here. The spring also will have certain kinetic energy. How do we calculate kinetic energy of the spring? It is something similar to previous question, but only thing previous question one end was at rest, other was in motion. So even also doesn't matter. Even here also velocity will vary linearly. Number of ways we could use some, we could have used relative motion also. But here, if I take this direction is positive, so from at this end here, velocity is minus v. At x is equal to L, velocity is equal to 2v. And in between, velocity is varying in a linear fashion. How velocity and x are related? Velocity is a linear function of x here, and this is the shape of the curve. Equation is equal to y is equal to mx plus c form here. But in place of y, we have velocity v as a function of x. Slope is positive here. Slope is equal to 3v by L and x here. And what is the constant here is equal to minus v. So we get velocity vx function. Then we get vx as a function of x. So at a distance x, we can find what the velocity will be. So if I find the velocity, I can calculate the kinetic energy of part of the spring, which is at a position x of length dx. Similar to previous question, we can again kinetic energy of mass between x and x plus dx, 1 by 2 dm into square of the velocity at position x. And if I integrate between 0 to L, I get the total kinetic energy of the spring. So this is about when the spring is a very odd kind of question. But once such question has come, so there's no harm in doing it. So this is not a very common question, but still, I hope this is all understood.